Humanity has accumulated a lot of serious experience of purpose-oriented perversion of the integral perception of the world and imposition of a false world understanding. It is this algorithmics that I would like to explain to you now. To do this, I have a picture drawn on the board. So the algorithmics of blocking the world understanding at the human level. It is used as standard in any field. Economics, politics, art, anywhere. The point is that there is always some alternative. There is a lie and there is a truth. And this alternative, lie and truth, it is at the top, what is drawn, a person is standing, and he chooses this or this. The choice between falsehood and truth, as a rule, is proposed to be made only by the initiated, at least for the last 3,000 years. When you and I live within the framework of the biblical conception of governance, and when there are schemes for the global concealment of fundamentally significant information, then creation is always divided like this. There is a lie and there is truth. Initiates have the right to choose between this or this. As for the crowd, the lie is split into two components, alternatives to each other, and the crowd is offered to choose between lie number 1 and lie number 2. Here is how the algorithmics works. For example, for the crowd, guys, for Russia, what is after all better, socialism or capitalism? Here you figure it out because socialism seems to be good for something, but it turns out that the problem is not in this, but the problem is in who prints the money. If you yourself print your own money and don't borrow, then you will be fine. If you don't understand this algorithmics, clearly and understandably stated in the Bible, in the book of Deuteronomy, I read word for word. And thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow, and thou shalt reign over many nations, but they shall not reign over thee. It turns out that everything is simple. One country prints money and sends it around the rest of the globe, while in another country there are pseudo-scientists who show that, no, you can't print money here. What is the difference? Print your own paper or bring a green paper wagon. Paper is paper. Inflation does not depend on whether you have red or green paper in circulation. Nevertheless, here is an absolute mess. It is imposed and somehow passes in the minds of people. And when people do not understand that the algorithmics are acting here, at the level of the credit financial system, and they are told, guys, sort it out there. In 1917 there is one revolution, in 1991 there is another revolution, and now they are swinging here, and they will continue to swing until we reach the level of global world understanding, and until we remove these algorithmics for blocking our understanding of what is happening. They will say to you, well guys, let's figure it out. Which is better, plan or market? And this is a pointless question. This is a false question in its essence. A question that swings you in this place between two situations that are absolutely unacceptable for practice. Because the plan and the market are two interconnected elements. The result can only be obtained when a rigidly planned economy is complemented by market regulation. It is impossible to describe everything. Therefore, the global vector of the country's development is strictly planned. Demographically conditioned needs are written down. That is, those who want to drive a Mercedes take buckets of caviar, these are his problems. But in order for a person to simply have a brain to work, he needs to be dressed, shod, he needs housing, minimal food. The more you eat, the worse your health. That is, you need to know the measure. Undereating, overeating, they are equally harmful for any person. Therefore, if you adjust the vector of objectives to demographically conditioned needs, then it becomes clear how to develop the country. This is a problem of the state, and everything else, as it were, the market must decide. Therefore, it is absolutely wrong to build some kind of alternative. It is inherently false. It leads to false alternatives. Or take the millennial dispute about what is after all primary, matter or consciousness. And so they swing it back and forth for centuries. Here matter is better, here consciousness is primary, and so on. Whole schools of philosophy. There are philosophers materialists, philosophers idealists. But you probably noticed, at least in my life I had a lot of acquaintances with a philosophical education. What distinguishes them is that they can talk very nicely in their audience, argue with each other, they can show you their erudition, but as a rule, in no practical matter are they stronger than those who have never heard of this philosophy at all. Why? Yes, because this is a purpose-oriented distortion of the world understanding through these philosophical schools. Because in reality, creation is arranged principally differently. Matter and information, matter and consciousness, these are inseparable substances. That is, there is no matter simply. Matter is matter only because it has some informational characteristics. If there are no informational characteristics, then there is no matter either. There is no information without a material carrier. Therefore, the question at the stage of its posing is meaningless. And if people begin to read and study these philosophical schools, then they fall under this algorithmics, and their true world understanding is blocked. Because they are slipped now one lie, now another, the holisticness of the perception of the world is violated. This is how the algorithmics of the perversion of the world understanding works, and it is standard in any question. We will talk and look at this picture every time, and you will see and understand that it all works flawlessly. They will say to you, who is more right, Serbs or Croats? Zhuganov with his Kamarila and Zhirinovsky will say, guys, let's form volunteer detachments, protect our brothers. Our Democrats will say, Russians are fascists in Chechnya, and so on. If you take Yugoslavia, there have always been two evil-minded people whose tasks were to play the rest into a kind of global slaughter. The only one who understood these scenarios was Alexander III, because he did not go through this school when a person's consciousness is blocked. You know that he came to reign somewhat unexpectedly for those who prepared Tsars. So what he said about today's Yugoslavia, you can say exactly the same. For everything that happens in the Balkans, I will not give the life of even one Russian soldier. This is a literate position, because they will tell you, is this one or that one better? These are two evil-minded people grappling with each other, and let them sort it out. What have we got to do with it? It is nice that this information goes to the top level today. Defense Minister Ivanov recently said, no, but what has Macedonia to do with it? We don't participate there. This is a literate position. This is provocation, which is arranged. And we are told, who is better there? Who is better in Chechnya? And in Chechnya, international terrorism works. What does the Chechen have to do with it? What does the Russian have to do with it? This setup and development is completely obvious. Which is better, dictatorship or democracy? But neither one nor the other. This is a deliberately false message. Who is better, Zhirinovsky or Gaidar? Well, is it really incomprehensible to anyone today that the entire party mass is a single mechanism governed from one center? In order to govern this or that country, you need to calculate the mood of the electorate, and under each bloc, you need to put your own leader and finance everyone. Probably your audience understands that Zhirinovsky, Zhuganov, Gaidar, Yavlinsky are financed from one wallet. They can be financed through whichever intermediaries, but this is one team. They have nothing meaningful, nothing significant. That is, they will, like Zhuganov, say, anti-people regime, Yeltsin's gang on trial, but these are emotions. And what, Zhuganov once said something meaningful? I met with him in the St. Petersburg Forum. Fortunately, we were closely acquainted before. I handed in the text of my speech and said, Gennady Andreevich, if you continue to hide all this, then everything that you do in relation to our people, you will have to answer for all this. And yet, not a sound since then. They will talk about anything, but not about some fundamentally significant moments, like governance. It is true, real, and not what they talk about on television. When we talk about the formation of the world understanding, it is very important to regress from these stereotypes, rise above these disputes, and go to the level of methodology and say, no guys, this spectacle is not for me. You argue with each other, but I have a different idea of the world.